Keisha Prylo woke before the first gull screech, when the marsh still held its breath and the Cooper River looked like a long sheet of pewter. Every dawn she bicycled from her grandmother's cottage on James Island to her stall in Charleston's city market, balancing a lidded laundry basket of half-finished sweetgrass coils on the rear rack. The market would not wake for 2 more hours, but she liked the hush, the time to steep the palmetto fronds and bulrush she had cut the evening before. The station wagon waves of tourists would come soon enough, drawn to the city's pastel stucco, shrimp and grits, and the baskets whose shapes had traveled an ocean and centuries. This morning she set her folding chair in its usual spot beneath the live oak beams, rubbed beeswax into her palms, and tightened the first spiral of a trinket tray. The faded radio at her feet whispered a low gospel hum. She had worked only a few minutes when a thud landed on the tabletop. A stack of imitation baskets, a cheap tourist consignment dropped by the market coordinator. "Vendor dropped out last minute," the woman said, already moving. "Can you display these till noon?" Keisha frowned. The knockoffs came from a discount warehouse outside Savannah. Raffia dyed a sour yellow, glued instead of stitched. Shells hot glue. They cost 1/10 of a real basket, but stole something deeper. Still, she owed the coordinator favors. She arranged the pile near her own work, sliding a handwritten sign beneath, "Not Sweetgrass novelty only." When she lifted the topmost piece, she felt a solid nub inside the coil. Probably a wad of glue, she thought. Another shortcut the factory used, but her finger traced deliberate right angles, not the lumpy shape of epoxy. Curiosity pricked. She fetched her narrow awl, eased it between stitches, and popped the small rectangle free. An ordinary black USB drive. Tidewater humidity wrapped the market, but the plastic felt cold in her hand. She looked around. No one paid attention. The beignet vendor scraped sugar off his griddle. A tour guide rehearsed jokes at the end of the hall. Keisha slipped the drive into her pocket, finished her tray, and waited for the day to unroll. By mid-afternoon, the market pulsed with camera flashes. Tourists fingered her real baskets, spying price tags. They drifted to the cheaper fakes. Keisha endured it like rain, part of the climate. Yet every few minutes her thoughts returned to the flash drive, tapping Morse in her pocket. When the church bells tolled 4, she packed up. Instead of pedaling toward the island, she turned inland, toward Rutledge Avenue, where her cousin-in-law Milo ran a repair shop devoted to resurrected laptops and salvaged radios. Milo grew up in the same Praise House choir. He would keep his mouth shut. She found him soldering a corroded circuit board, braids tucked under a ball cap that read, "Code Switcher." Behind him, a wall fan rotated, refusing to cool anything. "Hello to you too," he said when she held out the USB-like evidence. "Can you open it on something not online?" she asked. "Air-gapped, whatever you call it." Milo arched an eyebrow but fetched an ancient ThinkPad that still bore a Clinton Gore sticker. He booted a stripped-down Linux system, killed the Wi-Fi card, and clicked the drive's icon. A single folder blinked, Sangle Marsh. Inside were PDFs, spreadsheets, and a video file. Milo opened the video. The screen showed a handheld recording of silt-colored marshland at sunset. A man's voice, filmed in silhouette, spoke in a hush. "If you're watching this, I didn't make it to the meeting. The documents here prove Atlantic Pioneer Realty is falsifying erosion reports to condemn parcels along the Gadsden Creek corridor. They'll flip title to shell companies, claim tax credits, then develop. This will bury 10 Gullah burial sites and flood the sweetgrass fields west of Solagary. Take it to the state AG. Don't trust local." The feed jittered. The man's face never came into focus. The video cut to black. Keisha's breath lodged halfway. Sol Legare was 3 miles from her grandmother's cottage. She clicked an aerial map PDF. Red polygons sprawled along tidal fingers. The legend read, Phase were luxury cottages. Phase 2, private marina. Names of parcels sounded like home. Rivers, Coakley Ladson, Surnames of church elders. This ain't just some zoning scam, Milo murmured, scrolling through a ledger listing disbursements. Consultant fee Mayor S. $35,000. 0 cents. Historical compatibility study pre-approved. Bribe spelled plainly. Milo rubbed his brow. Where'd you find this? In a fake basket. Someone wanted it discovered by a weaver? He nodded. Because we'd see through the stitches. Keisha felt the room tilt. The heritage her grandmother carried in stories, rice fields, praise houses, ring shouts, was forever under siege from storms, tourists, and polished men in pastel jackety suits. Now the siege wore spreadsheets. We need backups, she said. Milo cloned the drive twice, handing one copy to her. Take the bike trail, he warned. Less predictable than the streets. Keisha stuffed the drive into her bra, the safe pocket every low-country woman used, and cycled home as dusk painted the salt marsh copper. The smell of pluff mud rose comforting and sad. She imagined dozers crushing cattails, Instagram cottages blocking moonrise over Mosquito Beach. Grandma Aura waited on the porch, stringing okra for soup. You look chaste, child. Keisha sat, heart still galloping. She explained the discovery, the files. Aura's eyes, cataract-gluded but fierce, narrowed. They think we don't know law, don't know paper. Your great-granddaddy kept every deed wrapped in oilcloth behind that mantle. She tapped her cane. But fraud can float on loopholes. We got to shine light. Aura suggested they speak to Reverend Fields, whose father once served as county councilman. Next morning, Casey carried the copy drive wrapped in wax paper. At Emmanuel AME's fellowship hall, people arranged folding chairs for Wednesday fish fry. Fields, silverhead but nimble, listened to the video twice. He called Deacon Bennett, head of the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition. Word traveled like sandpiper feet. By nightfall, a community meeting was scheduled at the Praise House on Sol Legare. Meanwhile, Milo phoned a friend at the Post and Courier investigative reporter Sienna Tran, whose exposés on opioid kickbacks once toppled a suburban hospital CEO. She agreed to meet but insisted on vetting. Friday evening, a storm system rolled up from Beaufort, shaking Spanish moss like loose teeth. Keisha drove her grandmother's dented Corolla across the narrow bridge to Sol Legare. The Praise House, no larger than a schoolroom, pulsed with bodies farmers, retired shrimpers, teenagers in Marshview High hoodies. Lanterns cast warm circles on pine floors scarred by ring shout dancing. Deacon Bennett opened the gathering with prayer in the rhythmic cadences of the old language. When Keisha stepped forward, palms damp, she saw neighbors who had bought her baskets for weddings, men who repaired her bicycle chain free of charge, Mrs. Sanders, who tucked extra fig preserves in her market lunchbox. She spoke slowly, explaining the hidden drive, the maps of stolen land, the bribery. Milo projected screenshots onto a sheet pinned to the wall. Gasps rippled when burial grounds appeared overlain by Menatee Pool. Voices rose. How could Atlantic Pioneer condemn heirs' property? Hadn't the county denied similar applications last year? A retired surveyor explained. Developers claimed sea level rise made the land uninhabitable, then patched numbers to win FEMA mitigation funds. Reverend Fields lifted his Bible like a gavel. We will not be erased by spreadsheet, he said, but we need evidence in the daylight. Sienna Tran, sitting inconspicuously near the doorway, stood. My paper can launch a series, but will face injunctions. We need whistleblower corroboration. Keisha remembered the silhouette's warning. If you're watching this, I didn't make it. We don't know who he is, she admitted. Maybe he's gone. Deacon Bennett stroked his beard. Somebody wove that drive on purpose. Maybe they work for the third-party surveyor out of Mount Pleasant-Sangle. Maritime Consultants. Milo pulled up a staff list. One name leapt. Jerome Green. Keisha blinked. She knew Jerome from the market, a quiet man who bought sweetgrass clippings to braid fish traps. lived in a rented room off Meeting Street. They decided to send a small delegation, Keisha, Milo, and Sienna, early next morning. As thunder drummed, Keisha walked Aura to the car. The elder grasped her wrist. "Remember, granddaughter, the basket tell a story, but the hand that weave can be cut. Be careful." Saturday dawned with heat already suffocating. They found Jerome's boarding house, peeling pink paint, porch sagging. No answer at his door. Landlord muttered he'd not seen the tenant since Tuesday. On a hunch, Milo picked the door latch with a driver's license. The room smelled of unemptied trash. They discovered clothes in drawers, but the bed untouched. Jerome likely hadn't slept here for days. In the wastebasket lay a spool of raffia, like that used in the knockoff baskets. Sienna's phone buzzed. She stepped into the hallway, returned pale. "Just got tipped that Atlantic Pioneer filed eminent domain petitions yesterday. Fast-tracked for Monday's council agenda. Someone leaked that they expect zero public resistance." Keisha exhaled sharply. "We have 48 hours. They aired options. Hold press conference? March. File temporary injunction, Sienna said. "We need immediate legal action. An injunction requires a petitioner with standing, someone whose property is directly threatened." Sienna. Aunt Willow Ladson, Keisha recalled, owned a half-acre burial lot adjacent to Gadsden Creek, deeded from 1883, perfect standing. They raced to Aunt Willow's bungalow. She wore a floral housecoat, hair in Bantu knots, and met them on the porch sipping chicory. When Keisha explained, Willow cackled. "They're messing with dead folks now. Those spirits don't play." But her eyes hardened. She fetched the yellow deed and agreed to be plaintiff. Sienna dialed a civil rights attorney in Colombia, Carla Minter, famed for beating a chemical plant's land grab near Denmark. Carla promised to draft injunction paperwork by evening if they supplied the evidence dossier. They drove back to Milo's shop to scan documents. The afternoon sun boiled asphalt. Cicadas whined like power saws. Inside, Milo's fan still failed its job. As he uploaded files to an encrypted drive, headlights swept the window. A dark SUV idled. Keisha peered. Two men in polos, the pastel uniform of Charleston developers, talked while gesturing at the storefront. "Lose Wi-Fi," Milo hissed. He yanked the internet cable they were using, offline machines, but caution never hurt. Then lights inside the shop died. The main breaker tripped. Metal clanged at the back door. Keisha felt a tremor through the floorboards. "Grab everything," Milo whispered. They slipped through the kitchenette into a narrow alley that emptied onto Cumming Street. Sienna phoned 911. Sirens in the distance emboldened them. The intruders apparently retreated. When police arrived, the SUV was gone. Officers took a lazy report, suggested maybe it was kids messing around. Keisha could almost taste the intimidation. Sienna's jaw set. "Good thing reporters carry redundancy," she said, tapping her camera bag with the backup drive. Night settled heavy. Carla emailed the prepared injunction. Willowy signed. By 11 p.m., the filing stamped into the federal district court docket. Automatic stay meant the county could not approve Atlantic Pioneer until hearing. But battles are never single rows. Sunday's Post and Courier front page carried Sienna's first story. USB drive links developer to fraud scheme on Sacred Gullah sites. Images of polygon maps soaked half the fold. Social media flared. Save Sol Laguerre trended local. A rally was scheduled at Marion Square. Keisha woke to her phone vibrating non-stop. Calls, texts, radio interview requests. She considered declining all, but Aura nudged. "Your voice weep the basket tighter." At the rally, hundreds gathered under palmetto flags. College students, church ladies, dock workers, an unlikely braid. Keisha stepped behind the portable mic. Across the square, she spotted the faux baskets vendor, guilt etched on her face. Evidently, she hadn't known contraband rode in her stock. Keisha spoke of rice field ancestors who braided sweetgrass to outlast slaveholders. of marsh birds teaching resilience. Developers think our land is empty space between profits, she said, but every tuft of Spartina holds names. Applause rose like surf. The mayor's office released a statement praising dialogue. But that afternoon, Keisha received a voicemail heavy with threat. "Stay out of what you don't understand, basket girl, or the marsh won't be the only thing submerged." She saved the message, forwarded to Sienna. Monday morning, the courthouse hall smelled of waxed floors and nervous sweat. Atlantic Pioneer's lawyers, hair slicked, clicked their briefcases. Carla wore flats and a linen suit. No nonsense. In the gallery, Keisha sat next to Aura and Willow. A bailiff called order. Atlantic Pioneer argued the injunction lacked standing, claiming Willow's burial plot sat outside the development's drainage plan. Carla countered with the GIS map showing flooding overlays, plus emails referencing "clear the cemetery." When the judge asked for the underlying environmental assessment, Pioneer's counsel flinched. Carla produced the PDFs from the USB, falsified soil toxicity data, duplicated paragraphs lifted from a North Carolina report. The courtroom murmured. The judge recessed to review evidence. During break, Keisha stepped into the corridor. There she saw him. Jerome Green, gaunt, eyes ringed by sleepless nights, leaning against a vending machine. He wore the same khaki shirt from the video. "You the basket weaver," he said softly. "And you hid the drive." He nodded. "They found out. I've been running. Figured if I testified outright, they'd bury me. Better to let the community hold the proof. Come inside. The judge needs you." Fear flickered, then resolve. Inside, Carla recalled the witness stand. Jerome swore in, voice trembling but clear. He described how Atlantic Pioneer VP Martin Aldrich ordered him to doctor the marsh salinity reports, how cash envelopes were delivered to the mayor's campaign committee. He had recorded conversations on his phone. He also explained his grandmother taught him small cane soil weaving. Hiding the USB in a knockoff basket felt poetic justice. The judge extended the injunction, ordered a criminal probe, and scolded the developer for egregious disregard of cultural and environmental stewardship. Applause burst until the bailiff threatened contempt. In the lobby, journalists swarmed. Jerome, blinking under flashes, thanked Keisha for her courage. She laughed. "All I did was pull a thread." Yet threads matter. Weeks later, the state attorney general opened a grand jury into Atlantic Pioneer and city officials. Federal marshals seized company records. The mayor resigned. The county designated Sol Legare and surrounding marsh as historic preservation overlay, securing buffers and grants for conservation. But triumph tasted more like salt than sugar. Jerome lived under protective order. Lawsuits crawled for years. Still, progress took root. The University of South Carolina launched a Gullah Heritage Research Fund. Tourists now opted for authentic sweetgrass, less enamored of novelty. One September afternoon, Keisha sat at her market stall. Her hands guided coils into a harvest basket wide as her lap. Jerome approached shyly, beard trimmed, holding 2 coffees. "I'm learning to weave for real," he said. "Thought maybe you'd critique." He opened a cloth to reveal clumsy but earnest coils. Keisha grinned. "First lesson. Don't fight the grass. Let it sing." He watched, entranced, as she fed palmetto strips through the spiral. Around them, the market thrummed. But Keisha felt anchored, each stitch a promise. A tourist couple hovered, examining her finished baskets. The husband asked the price, winced theatrically, then drifted toward cheaper curios. Keisha did not mind. She'd learned the market of integrity never discounted itself. Later that week she rode to Sol Legare. Construction fences once posted along the creek were gone. Instead, volunteers planted spartina to rebuild shoreline. Children chased fiddler crabs among reeds. On a makeshift stage, Reverend Fields sang, "Wade in the water." Keisha joined the circle dance. Wade in the water. Keisha joined the circle dance, Sweetgrass anklets whispering. Grandma Aura sat in a lawn chair, cane tapping syncopation. She beckoned Keisha over, placed her hand on her cheek. Ask it tell a story, she whispered. Now your stitches hold chapters none can unknot. Keisha gazed across the marsh, sun glinting on each tidal pool like small mirrors. The horizon held threats, storms, sea level rise, yet another developer's glossy brochure, but also possibility. The sweetgrass, once nearly choked by ill intentions, swayed free. She inhaled the peppery scent, lifted her palms, and began a new coil, tighter than truth, looser than love woven for the generations listening in the wind.